Alright Internet, let's swing into action! Today, we're going to be talking about Astral and Pendulum Summoning, and how Astral may have accidentally caused Pendulum Summoning. Let's look at some facts. Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc V tells the story of Yuya Sakaki, your run-of-the-mill dueling theater kid turned interdimensional freedom fighter. In the show's two-part premiere, he accidentally pioneers the mechanic of pendulum summoning during his first ever professional duel. 3 of Yuya's cards, the Odd-Eyes Dragon, the Stargazer Magician, and the Timegazer Magician, are magically altered in his very hand, transforming them to become the very first pendulum cards. Using these monsters and the new pendulum summoning ability to defeat his opponent, Yuya attracts the attention of the Leo Corporation, who can't understand how their system even recognized these new game mechanics, let alone the specific cards being used. Nonetheless, it does recognize them, and this prompts them to begin research and development on creating new pendulum cards of their own. How Yuya created, or discovered, or triggered the first pendulum monsters is never really explored. We end up learning that he's the reincarnation of a duelist who brought about the apocalypse in a previous reality, and it's sort of implied that that had something to do with pendulum summoning becoming a thing, but the story isn't really explicit about how any of this goes together. But I do think that there are enough breadcrumbs scattered throughout the franchise to make an educated guess as to what happened. So let's start with the obvious question. What are pendulum cards? Well, in both design and function, pendulum cards are a mashup of traditional monster cards and spell cards, and can occupy both zones on the field, with most possessing unique abilities exclusive to each zone. But if they are both monsters and spells, well, I guess we need to know what both of those things are. The show has monster cards pretty well covered. These are the living spirits of creatures. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, we learn that the first duel monster spirits were born from the souls of mortals. In ancient times, Egyptian sorcerers used to bind these creatures to stone tablets so that they could be summoned to do their master's bidding. But nowadays, spirits tend to pretty much universally end up inside of trading cards. Spell cards are, well, magic spells, even originally being called magic cards back before Konami was forced to rename them to avoid a copyright dispute with Wizards of the Coast and their Magic the Gathering trading card game. So where does magic come from in Yu-Gi-Oh? Well, we learn a lot about the nature of magic in 2 specific shows, Yu-Gi-Oh's Duel Monsters and Zexal. In Duel Monsters, the power of the trading card game is tied to the Shadow Games, ritual battles performed by sorcerers in ancient Egypt. This power is largely tied to the Millennium items and disappeared from the world following the battle between the pharaoh Atem and Zark the Destroyer, during which the pharaoh sealed the Shadow Games away. The power was dormant for a few thousand years, then the show happened. This tells us a lot about where the card game came from, but not exactly where magic itself comes from. In fact, one of the greater mysteries of Duel Monsters is that of the Millennium Spellbook, the book of knowledge that contained the instructions for creating the Millennium items. But who wrote this book, and where did this knowledge come from? Well, the who is something we can only guess about. Atlantis, Iliaster, space aliens from the future, who knows? But Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal gives us some strong evidence as to where the magic itself comes from. The story of Zexal follows lovable idiot who is still nonetheless an idiot, Yuma Tsukumo, who bonds with a spiritual entity called Astral. Though lacking any distinct memories of his own, Astral is a powerful duelist and guides the inexperienced Yuma as they try to collect the 100 Number Monsters, a series of Xyz cards that each bear a fragment of Astral's lost memories. During this story, Yuma ends up traveling to Astral's homeworld, the Astral World, where he learns about chaos. Chaos is an energy, seemingly unique to the people of this world, but it is in fact present in all living things. It drives life to continue developing and growing, and we see that characters can actually harness their chaos to perform feats of magic. Yuma heals people. He and Astral fuse into Dragon Ball Z characters. They use chaos to create spell cards like the rank up magic spells out of thin air, proving that chaos is specifically what is needed to harness and cast magic spells. So basically, chaos is the magic system in Yu-Gi-Oh! Chaos is life. Life is magical. If you run out of chaos, you die. And it's derived from the power of the ancient divine dragon that created all life in the universe. A dragon that is notably similar in design to divine beings like Slifer the Sky Dragon and the Winged Dragon of Ra. So when the ancient Egyptians, or Atlanteans, or Iliaster, or any of the other dozen ancient societies in Yu-Gi-Oh! Were practicing magic thousands of years ago, they were harnessing and using the power of chaos. And this is the power that made the Millennium items, which were then used by Maximilian Pegasus to create spell cards when he was first manufacturing the game of Duel Monsters. But we do learn in Zexal that chaos more or less disappeared from the world, which we know is true of magic in Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole. Remember that at the end of Duel Monsters, the Shadow game with Zark forced the Pharaoh to seal away the very power of the Shadow games so that no one could ever threaten the world again as Zark had. Before this happened, you had magicians and sorcerers like the priest Mahad, his apprentice Mana, and the high priest Akhenaten, all of whom had the ability to cast magic without the assistance of a Millennium item. But flash forward to the modern day, and regular people can't just do magic. The only way for a normal person to perform magic was to use a magical item, like the Millennium items, or the Shadow Charms, or nuclear power plants run on the souls of trading cards. This is still the case by the time we get to Zexal, with Yuma requiring the Emperor's Key, a magical artifact not of this world, to access the supernatural powers of both Astral and the number cards. But the finale of Zexal had some pretty major ramifications for the world going forward. The whole thing culminates in a war between the people of Astral World and the warlord emperors of another reality called Barian World. Both sides seek to exterminate one another using an artifact called the Numeron Code, a Duel Monsters card that contains the infinite power of the dragon god that created all of reality. Yuma and Astral win the war and gain access to the Numeron Code, which, after some disagreement on how it should be used, Astral decides to use it to fuse Astral World and Barian World into a single reality. A decision that causes the power of chaos to emanate through reality again, just as it had when the creator dragon gave birth to creation. And that means that Astral undid what the pharaoh Atem had done thousands of years before. The threat that the pharaoh saved mankind from was suddenly back, and now it was possible for regular people to just use magic again. Good job, Astral! Zexal ends with some new threat on the horizon, but we never learn what that threat is. The finale fades to black on the heroes flying towards danger. Not one of the most satisfying endings, and its successor, Arc V, seemingly ignores this ending and picks up at a point where everything's fine. But look at the changes between the end of Zexal and the beginning of Arc V. Between these two series, dueling technology is upgraded to the point where living souls of duel monsters can be given physical form through holograms. That's technology directly harnessing and shaping magic, bringing order and form to chaos itself. And of course, Yuya is suddenly gifted with the first Pendulum cards in all of creation, monsters infused with chaos energy to exceed their original limitations. Connecting all of the dots here, none of this could have been possible before Astral brought chaos back to the world. But of course, as wonderful as this chaos-powered technology is, there is a cloud for every silver lining. And in this case, that cloud was Zark. Zark started off as a gifted duelist, not really any different from Yugi or Jaden or Yusei or Yuma, but grew more powerful and unstable as he repeatedly unleashed the full power of his 4 dragon monsters in duels, crippling or killing his opponents along the way. In time, his corrupted bond with his corrupted dragons grew so powerful that he summoned his Astrograph Sorcerer monster, a monster that was suddenly very real thanks to the readily available power of chaos, and used that power to fuse himself with his 4 dragons, creating a monstrosity bent on total annihilation. The battle to defeat him grew so intense that reality itself shattered around him, and his spirit was drawn and quartered across 4 new realities, coming to be housed within the boys Yuto, Yugo, Yuri, and Yuya, the same Yuya who would go on to pioneer Pendulum Summoning. As I said at the beginning, the specifics of how Zark caused this to happen after his downfall are unclear, but his involvement seems certain, as both the Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon and the Stargazer and Timegazer magicians are derived from monsters in Zark's original deck. But the beautiful tragedy of all of this is, if it weren't for Astral's heroic decision to end the war by joining Astral World and Barian World together by using, or some might say misusing the Numeron code, none of this would have ever happened. The world wouldn't have been destroyed, and we'd know nothing of pendulum summoning today. But what do you think about Astral accidentally causing pendulum summoning? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, hit the subscribe bell thing if you believe in magic or trading cards, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!